Have you ever been stressed out about money? I remember being in college, and it was the first time I was really stressed out about it. How many of you ate ramen noodles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because you didn't have any money? That was me my senior year of college. I had a Honda Civic, which wasn't worth a whole lot of money, but it got me where I needed to go. And all of a sudden, one day, it just wouldn't start. And so I had a guy in the parking lot say, "You're going to have to get that to a mechanic." So he helped me get the car to the mechanic. And the mechanic said, "It's going to cost $200 to repair." Well, he might as well said $2 million because I didn't have $200, but I did have a little trick up my sleeve. It was a clutch, which means you could push it, pop the clutch, and it would start. So I went an entire semester. I would park on a hill usually so that I could just put it out, and then I would jam it into the clutch and off it would go. It wasn't very impressive to my girlfriend at the time, Rochelle. She wasn't all impressed with that, but I didn't have the money and I was really stressed about it. I finally got to Christmas, got some money, and it got fixed. Fast forward about 10 or so years. We're getting ready to start the Village Christian Church here in Minooka. We happen to live in Morris. We had a great house there, and I felt very strongly that we needed to move to Minooka and live in the community of which this church was going to be. Rochelle, my wife, did not agree. She was like, "You just drive over. It'll be just fine." But that caused a little bit of stress. It was a little bit of relationship stress, but ultimately it was money stress, because we were going to have to spend more money on a house, and we already lived in one that we absolutely loved. So we looked at all the homes. We purchased one in Shanahan. It was due to be completed in the spring of 2005. This is the fall of 2004. And so we're like, "Oh, we're good. They won't get done in the spring. They're always late. It'll be summer." So we put our house up for Morris for sale in September of 2004, thinking it's going to sell. I was actually more worried that it would sell and that we wouldn't have a place to live until our house got completed in Shanahan. Well, the opposite happened. They completed the house in Shanahan in December of 2004. We actually closed on December 31st, and our house in Morris didn't sell. So we were 45 to 60 days away from 2 house payments, 2 property tax bills, 2 utility bills. You want to talk about stress. We had to call our parents and say, "Hey, we may have made a pretty big financial mistake, and we've got enough money to make it 1 month. We had a little bit of an emergency fund, but past that, we're going to need to be bailed out." Money stress and marital stress go hand in hand, and there was a lot of stress in that moment. Let me ask you again, have you ever been stressed about money? You know what? Money is the number one stress in our lives, according to research. This is crazy. 70 to 90% of all Americans say the thing they stress out about more than anything else is money. Here's even a more difficult statistic. 76% of all Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, which means if they miss a paycheck, big problems, right? What are we going to do? How are we going to figure this out? That causes stress. I could go on and on with the depressing statistics, but with these difficult statistics, here's another one that's really incredible. Get this. The average person doesn't really believe they have a problem when it comes to finances. The average person is like, "We're good. We got it covered. It's no big deal." It's like the truck driver who drove through the Lincoln Tunnel from New Jersey to Manhattan with his big rig. The height of the tractor trailer was 13 feet 6 inches. The height of the Lincoln Tunnel 13 feet. So you can imagine, wham, they go through, and instead of stopping, the guy kept going the entire 1.5 miles of the tunnel, tearing his way onto the other side. He got to the other side, and there was this tractor trailer just peeled back like a tin can. And it was like, what happened? There's a lot of things in life that shouldn't happen. 13 feet 6 inches, 13 feet. We should figure that out, but we don't. We say we're fine. We don't need any help on this. We're just going to keep barreling through life and causing all kinds of problems. Hey, just so in case you're wondering, no one was injured in that particular accident, but an unlimited amount of tunnel tiles at the top were absolutely ruined. Some of you might be thinking, "Why is Nate talking about money at church? That is the dumbest thing in the world." I disagree. It's the number one competitor for your heart by God. He knows that the number one competitor for your heart, and that's all he wants, is your heart, is money. And it's the root of so much sin and struggle and stress in our lives. Just for fun, one more quick audience participation here. How many verses are there on prayer in the New Testament? Take a guess. Does anybody know?
10.
More than 10? Way more?
50. 75.
Way more than 50? 500 are on the topic of prayer. How many verses are there on the topic of faith in the New Testament?
300.
More than 300?
500.
500 again. You got it, okay? Give or take. I mean, it's like 500. So we're given a general. How many verses are on money?
900.
More than 900?
1,000.
More than 1,000?
1,200.
More than 1,200? 2,000 verses. Jesus talked about money more than any other topic by a magnitude of 4, because he knew it would be the number one stress in our life, and he knew that we would need some help. So that's why we're doing this series. It's called the ABCs of Financial Freedom. A stands for attitude, which is what we're going to look at today. B, next week, will be breaking free from debt. And C stands for making a choice. If you have your Bibles, which all of you do, those that are watching, if you'd like to turn to Matthew chapter 25, we're going to begin in verse 14. I'm going to be reading from the New Living Translation. So if that is something you could line up on your phone or you've got that, that's going to be great. If not, it's going to read pretty similar. I'm going to spend a lot of time in Matthew 25, and then at the end, I'm going to spend time in Philippians chapter 4, verses 11 through 13. So here we go. Matthew 25, verse 14. This is a parable that Jesus is telling to his disciples. A parable is a story that has a spiritual truth to it. Here we go. Verse 14. Again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted them with money while he was gone. So he's like, okay, I'm going to take a little story. The master I'll give you the cheat code here. The master in the story is God, and we are the servants who get this money that he gives to us. Verse 15, he gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. Then he left on his trip. Now let's have a little fun here. Did a little study on this. 1 bag of silver would equal 20 years of a day laborer's wage. So I looked that up a little bit, and I gave a pretty good, it's actually a little low, but it's a good number, $50,000. Our world today. 20 years times $50,000 is what?
$1 million.
That's $1 million. So 1 bag of silver would be $1 million. Now remember in the story, somebody got 2 bags, that's 2 million, and the other person got 5. That's 5 million. I'd like to be the 5 million guy. Wouldn't that be fun? Well, you might be thinking the same thing. I'm going to lean in a little bit. I'm actually going to literally lean in on this. Most of you who are watching are going to have at least $5 million flow through your hands in your lifetime. I did a little study as well. The average household income, when I kind of looked at our area, is over 100,000. Some way over 100,000. But let's just use that number. You take 100,000 times 40 years of working, that's $4 million. And then if you retire and you blow through some money there, you get an inheritance, there's another million, there's your 5. We're all probably in the $5 million category. Now back to our story, verse 16. The servant who received the 5 bags of silver, the 5 million, began to invest the money and earned 5 more. Verse 17, the servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. Verse 18, but the servant who received the 1 bag of silver, what did he do? He dug a hole in the ground and he hid his master's money. The first 2 guys were like, I'm going to manage this well. It's a gift. It's on loan. I'm going to do a good job. The other guy was like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm literally going to dig a hole and put it in the hole. Verse 19, after a long time, the master returned from his trip and called them to give account of how they had used whose money? His money. That's interesting, right? The servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 5 more. Verse 21, the master was full of praise. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more, what's the text say? Responsibilities. Isn't that interesting? And then a fun thing at the end, let's celebrate together. God's like, if you do a good job, we're going to have fun in life. We're going to enjoy this. It's going to be Awesome. And if I know I can trust you with a little, I'll give you more responsibilities. That's cool to think about God looking at it that way. Now, if you read on to verse 23 and 24, it's the 2-bag of silver guy, same result of what happened. And now let's go to verse 24, where he talks to the last guy who hid the money. Verse 24, then the servant with the 1 bag of silver came and said, Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was, what's that word say there? I was afraid. Should never be afraid. That's the opposite of who God calls us to be. I was afraid I would lose, what's the next 2 words? Your money. So I hid it in the earth. Look, here's your money back. Verse 26, but the master replied, you wicked and lazy servant. That sounds pretty harsh language. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you at least deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it. Verse 28, then he ordered, take the money from his servant and give it to the one with the 10 bags of silver. That guy we can trust. This guy we can't. There's a lot to unpack here. This one I'm going to read word for word because I think it's very powerful. The last servant tries to defend his inaction by blaming God, the guy who gave him the gift. Isn't that ridiculous? God's like, I've given all of this to you with some basic instructions and warnings, and you couldn't handle it. And here you're blaming me? Guess what? I'm going to take it from you. Now, there's 2 principles that I think we can draw out that I believe Jesus is trying to teach us here about our ABC's attitude towards money. The first is this. God is the owner. We are the managers. God is the owner. We are the managers. God was the master in the parable, and he handed out this money to these particular people. Now, some of you are already like, wait a minute. I worked hard for many, many years for the money, and I get all of that, okay? Let me ask you a few questions. Who created your body? Who gave you a work ethic? Who made you with the gifts and abilities that you have? Psalm 34:1 is very clear. It says, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The world and all its people belong to him. God's the owner. We're the managers. Some of you are like, still don't agree. That's okay. That's a good pushback. You might say, I own my home. I would first ask, have you paid it off? If you haven't paid it off, your bank is the one that owns the home. If you have paid it off, yeah, you've got a piece of paper that says that. Some of you might say, I own my car. I would ask again, does the bank own the car or do you own the car? And if you own the car and you can show me the title, way to go. But let me ask this. How long will you own that home or car? 30 years? 50 years? 75 years? Is anybody going to own a home for 150 years? No. Why? You're going to die. And it's going to go to the next person, and they'll get to manage it for a little while. God gives us this one life and this one amount of money to manage, and it's important that we view it the right way. That's number one. God's the owner, we're the manager. Number two is there's always going to be someone who has more, and there's always going to be someone who has less. There was the 5 and the 2 and the 1. The truth is there'll always be someone in your life that has more, and there'll always be someone who has less. And in some ways, I think one of the lessons we can learn in this is contentment. Are we content with what we have, or are we not content with what we have? Because there's always going to be someone with more. You know what's interesting is I've traveled around the world. The people that I find are the most content and have the most joy are the ones who have the least. I've been to Africa multiple times, and I would say their joy level is like here, and my joy level is here. And as far as income and possessions are concerned, mine is here, and theirs is there. They don't have any money. They just have enough clothes to kind of make it through a week, and enough food to make it through the next day, and yet they're just smoking me on joy and contentment. When I've traveled to different parts of Mexico and Central America, same thing. Now, I've been around people who are wealthy, and most of them are jerks. Is that okay to say? Like they're just so overwhelmed with like the pursuit and the goals and all that. I've been around some who are just the most wonderful people in the world, but most really, really struggle, there's always going to be people who have more. And if we get into that habit or like, I just want more, we're never going to be satisfied. Paul said this about the comparison game and about being content in Philippians chapter 4, verses 11 through 13. I'll give you just a moment to go there. He was a guy that was born into a wealthy family. He was a guy that had a lot of status. He was kind of the top of the level on all of the societal rungs of the ladder. And he says this in verse 11, I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret. It's like there's a secret to this. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or an empty stomach, with plenty or little. You ready for the secret? Look at verse 13. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. My focus is Christ. It's not money. It's not things. It's not more. It's not less. It's Christ. Let me ask you a question. I think it's a good question. I'd like to ask it to myself. Are you content? Or are you just filled with stress and anxiety and struggle and worry and anxiousness all about money? I think our society, very generally, is not content. I would say these words. I think a lot of people think like this. I'm satisfied with what I have until you have what I don't have. I'm satisfied with what I have until you have what I don't have. I really like my phone, but they got a newer one. I want that one. I really like my car until I see somebody with a little bit nicer one and the newer model. I want that one. I really like these golf clubs, but the newer ones, I think that's okay. If you need a new golf club, that's all right. Satan can get us no matter what, right? How do we live out these principles? God is the owner, we're the manager. How do we be content? Because there's always going to be people who have more and always people that have less. Well, I'm going to give you 3 simple, easy steps that are all rooted in Scripture, and they're going to blow your mind, and they're going to change your life radically if you can just follow them from the Bible. You ready? Here we go. Number 1, track your spending. Actually write down where the money is going. Number 2, develop and live by a budget. Have a plan. Like, this is how much is coming in, and this is what we're actually going to spend. Number 3, set aside $1,000 or more in an emergency fund. Because no matter how good you plan, there's probably going to be something that's going to come up, and you're going to need to be bailed out. And if you're paycheck to paycheck and there's nothing, it's going to be a problem. So, if you go to our website, thevillagechristianchurch.com, you'll see a little For You tab. If you click on the For You tab, you'll go down to Resources. And if you go to Resources, it'll say Ramsey Plus Financial Program. You can go on that and you can have it for free. We've already paid for it. And it's got all these things that are going to help you to do these things. Track your spending, live by a budget, and help yourself to get to that emergency fund. Why would I ask you to do that? Well, because just over 25 years ago, my wife and I did. We were so happy being married to one another. It was before children, right? We had all this money and all this time and all these things. And we also had these things called credit cards. You familiar with these? It's a really neat thing. You just swipe and you get to have stuff. They just give you stuff. You just swipe it and they just give it to you. And then what happens at the end of the month is the credit card people, they send you a bill. And then you're like, what happened? Who spent all this money? And you're like, I guess we did. And we didn't have enough money to pay the credit card company. And so they were so kind and so gracious, they would say, don't worry about it. We're just going to roll that balance over. Just make a minimum payment. We don't want to, alter your life in any way. And we'll charge you 22 to 29% on that money, and you'll never get out of debt. Well, we decided that's not how we were going to live. And so we decided, number 1, we were going to actually track our spending. We wrote down all of our expenses on a piece of paper. We literally had one piece of paper, and it was like, here's what it costs the house and the utilities and the laundry and the groceries. And we just started writing that down, and we balanced that with like what we were making. It's called a zero-based budget. Like what you make minus what you spend equals 0. And then once we got that figured out, we started to set money aside. If my memory is correct, we got a tax return, and that became our emergency fund. And we were able to really get going from there. Now, here's what's interesting about the emergency fund. We needed new tires all of a sudden. Those things wear out amazingly. Like after a period of time, they just wear out. You got to get new tires. We didn't budget for that. We had an emergency fund. We got that taken care of. We had some medical problems. And when you go to the hospital, they take care of you, and thank God for that. But there's a deductible that you got to pay, and there's some other things. We've used the emergency fund for that. One time we got a lawnmower, and I didn't change the oil in it for 2 years. You're not supposed to do that. We had to go buy a new lawnmower because of my stupidity. So try to stay away from the stupid emergency fund and just use it for the real ones. In this world today, you can do all this digitally. You don't have to write it in pen and paper. In fact, when you download that Ramsey Plus, which I will say again, is free. We paid for that for you. We'd love for you to utilize it. You can do it digitally. In our days, we had the pencil and we had the eraser. And we just about ran out of the eraser because we kept, no, we can't spend that much money there. Wait, no, I really value this. I want to spend it. And we just kind of had that. And once we got that put together, we did something really crazy. I'm going to blow your mind. By the way, we still do this. We went all cash. So we just got rid of cards. We just didn't use them anymore. Why? Because when you actually give cash, like that hurt. I had it, it was good, so I'll give you a great example. So we had an eating out budget, and we put that amount of cash when we got paid on the first of the month in the envelope. And then if we got to the 25th of the month and there was no more money to eat out, we just say, you want to go eat out tonight? Whoop, there's the envelope. We're not eating out tonight because there's no money in there. Or if there was like $4, we go to Taco Bell because it used to be like 69 cents, for a taco. That's how we did it. And it was really amazing because we had already decided where the money was going to go. And when it was there, we enjoyed it. And when it wasn't, we were just content enough to be like, we're going to have ramen noodles tonight. It'll be just fine until we get to the first of the month. It took us 3 or 4 months to dial this in. It might take you about that same amount of time because you just don't realize where all the money's going. It just takes time to be like, oh my goodness. And oh, by the way, a couple of pro tips. Birthdays will sneak up on you. A lot of people in our family are born in June, so we have to budget a bigger amount in June because for some reason that's when everyone was born. Christmas will sneak up on you too. Even though it comes every year on December 25th, you need to plan ahead for that, and so on, and so on, and so on. You can get it all dialed in, and things can go really smoothly until you buy a house, and you can't sell your house. So even in the best of circumstances, it doesn't always work out, but I will say this, God worked it out. We got an all-cash offer on our house in Morris. In fact, it was above asking. And they weren't bidding against anybody. And we just took it. And 2 days before we were going to have to make 2 house payments, we had extra money to make that first one. Only God. You stressed about money? The number one stress in life, according to the research, says it's all about money. Money's not a bad thing. Money's actually a good thing. God gives it to us. But if we place our hope in money, it becomes bad instead of God, right? What's the secret of being content? I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Last verse of the day, this is 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17. If you just flip over a little bit from Philippians, you'll be able to get there. If you're on your Bible app, you can use that. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17. Amazing, amazing scripture talking about money. It says this, teach those who are rich in this world not to be proud and not to put their trust in their money. That's the first problem. It's not ours. We're just managers. But when we get to that point, you can see that it's gone off the rails. I'm going to read that first sentence again. Teach those who are rich in this world not to be proud and not to invest or not to trust in their money, which is so unreliable. Isn't that true? Their trust should be in, what's it say? In God, who richly gives us all we need, not all we want, all we need, and I like this last part, for our, can you say it with me? Enjoyment. Yeah. Here's my guess. You read the first sentence and you saw the people rich in this world and you assumed it was all the rich people that have the big fancy houses and all the different things. And certainly there are people who have big fancy houses and a lot more. But if you woke up today and you're making $60,000 per year in your household, you're rich. You're in the top 5% of the world. There's 95% of people who have way less than you. God is not after your money. God is after your heart. And when we put our trust in what we think is our money, which is just on loan from Him, we've become the center of the universe instead of God being the center of the universe. And He gives it to us richly so that we can enjoy it. So, here's your takeaways. Simple, easy stuff that will radically change your life, but you got to be willing to do it. Number one, track your spending. We've got the free resources on the website. If you need help with that, just email us. We'd be happy to help you. Track your spending, develop and live on a budget, and set some money aside for an emergency fund for things you can't plan for, and have no stress. Wouldn't that be great? Put your trust in God, not money. Thanks for being with us today. We've got a little QR code that you can scan, and in that you'll have an opportunity to receive prayer, communion, worship, talk to a pastor, connect in a Bible study, be baptized, whatever it is that you would need. We'd love to be able to serve you. We look forward to meeting you there.